Every now and then I remember to step back and look at where I live and admire it for how beautiful it is and realize how unique it is to live at the base of a mountain like this one. That's the view from my garage. And if I step out this way, there's the mountain right there, coming down, almost to my doorstep. And as you can see from the colors, especially high up there on the peak, we're getting into mid-fall. It's actually October 15th. And although the weather is lovely, it's actually 10 degrees above normal. And so I haven't had to do some things that I need to get done because I haven't felt the panic to do so. But now, next week, we're supposed to start having some cooler weather. So it's time to start getting the hives really in gear for winter. And I thought I'd just quickly show you what I'm gonna take out to do this probably last full inspection of the hive. So I've got my frame rest, 2 pieces of burlap, so that when the first one burns out, I can get going, keep it going. I've got my hive tool, that to light everything, and my trusty bee jacket. One of the things I'm going to do today to get ready for winter is put in bottom boards, solid bottom boards on both hives. I'm going to remove the screened bottom boards and put these in. And as you can see, they're just a solid half-inch, 3/4 piece of plywood with some supports running sideways across the bottom, and then this little shim here, so that when I put the hives on top, there is the gap for the bees to enter. This is the one I used last year for my first hive. Since I have 2 hives, I had to get a second one. These run about 20 bucks. I'm sure if I had the time and the plywood, I could make them, but I just didn't feel like making them myself. So let's get going. Before I start doing the inspection and putting the solid bottom boards on, just a quick explanation. The solid bottom boards are to reduce airflow and so that the bees keep warmth inside the hive as it cools down. And I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing. I'm going to do this in a time lapse. So you'll see me taking apart the hives, checking things, and putting those solid bottom boards in, then putting everything back together. Here's a rundown on how I think that went and what I saw. First off, I think both hives are doing better than I anticipated. That being said, well, maybe I should say the second hive is doing a lot better than I anticipated. The first hive isn't doing as well as I anticipated. There was brood in there in that first hive. That's the hive that actually did the robbing a month or so ago. And I expected it to be a lot more robust, to have a lot more brood than it did. It did have brood, just not as much as I was anticipating. That being said, it does have a lot of nectar and honey in production there. So the feeder seem to be taking that. And actually the feeder was mostly empty. In fact, both feeders were mostly empty to about the same level, which was great. And what was left over had kind of turned alcoholic. You could smell it. So I've taken those out. I haven't put them back in yet, but I will be. I have to make some more syrup. I've run out of syrup for them. But I'll get those back in and just keep feeding them for as long as I can. So the first hive, not doing as well as I
had expected, but it's not doing poorly from what I can tell. I looked specifically and very carefully for any mites on the bees. Didn't see any, and I didn't see any on the bottom board when I took it out. So hopefully the mite treatment worked, and they'll be able to get through the winter now. The second hive, a lot more brood than I anticipated, just a whole lot more. In fact, that's why I held up that frame for quite a while there. Hopefully in the time-lapse you actually get to see it. There's just a couple frames that were just packed with brood, which was great. That being said, there were several of them that were bald. What that means is when the bee gets to a certain level of development, the pupa needs to be capped off. You shouldn't be able to see the little developing bee's head with the eyeballs. It looks like this pale white bee with these little red eyeballs developing. And I saw about 10 such open cells, and those are called bald pupa. And you don't want to see bald pupa. It can be an indicator of a viral infection, often brought about by mites. So I was looking for mites. Once again, I didn't see any on the backs of the bees. That being said, you don't see them on the backs of the bees until they've pretty well infested all the bees on their chest, where you can't really see them. So I looked on the bottom board. I didn't see any mites there, and I did the mite treatment for that hive. So hopefully they're okay. And those bald pupa are just random outliers, because the vast majority of those cells were of the brood cells were totally capped. And there was also a lot of honey in production in that second hive. So I think they're doing okay. Crossing my fingers. This is all just like, I'm doing what I know how to do and what I've read and seen other people do, and I'm hoping that it works. I'm hoping that they're strong. Both hives are strong enough to get through the winter now. But because we do have a few more days of warm-ish weather, I'm going to keep feeding them for as long as I can, give them as much support before the weather turns. The first hive got a little grumpy. They got really noisy and agitated. And when I was putting them back together, I was having to use a lot of smoke to get them to just dissipate off the frames so I could put them back in. They were dive bombing my veil more than usual. So I don't know, maybe they're feeling a little nervous with the weather change coming up. I don't know. But there was signs in both hives of the queen being present, of having laid recently. I saw pupa in all stages of development in both hives. So the robbing from a month ago, I'm hoping that we have the effects of that under control, and that they are now going to be ready to get through the winter.